What were some of the success stories you've had that you wouldn't have had?
So far, my favorite success story isn't even about scalability in the sense that we've done so much, but we looked at we were actually testing it and we were throwing individual sites into it to make sure that the results were what we would expect if we did it manually. It was like a 6,400 or 7,800 square foot mixed use site outside of San Diego. And we never would have looked at it. It doesn't hit any lease audit threshold on the planet, right? It's not really office. It's not in a sophisticated, mature real estate market. It's not big. The numbers weren't big. Nothing was big. And we threw it in there, and the tool immediately got confused because one of the ways to very easily just kind of sketch out what the expectation should be is what a tenant does in the very first time they get into the lease. So you do a pro forma, right? So we do our own version of an automated pro forma and say, well, if you're in this market and you're paying this, and this is what the lease says, you should at least look like this over time, whatever that is. And this didn't look anything like that. And the tool got confused and was like, this doesn't, like, to us, it doesn't make any sense. And you'll get a kick out of this because it's ridiculous. So it turns out that it was supposed to be a base year lease. And from the beginning of time, the landlord was billing everything net because they weren't accustomed to base year lease tenants. And it wasn't huge money, but nobody at that company was a real estate person. So they just kept signing off on it and saying, well, it's not. But over the course of a 10-year lease, it was worth $258,000. No one on the planet would have picked that lease and ever looked at it. The tool picked it and we looked at it, and it took us all of 15 minutes to look at the lease. So we made them $258,000 in 15 minutes. And to me, that's exactly why we developed it. To say that there are tons and tons and tons of 7,800 square foot leases out there that don't require attention is true, but which ones? Well, now we are starting to get to a place where I can figure that out without too much upfront investment.
Which ones do you think are the best to read a lease, to make comments to the lease? You must be testing these all the time.
We have the last few that I've seen, like Harvey is taking very big bites out of lots of, and they're very impressive. So it's hard not to mention them in any conversation. From a lease abstraction perspective, a pretty good one is actually a company called Brickle. That's actually a very good tool. There's a variety of others. Like, I mean, again, the challenge in this market is that there are so many players, ourselves included, that do a niche something. And that finding that continuum is very difficult.
No, I was wondering for like a broker, if there was one that they could just send through a machine and it'll tell you what the comments are, where the big issues were.
Quite a few, but I mean, Brickle's one that I that's more of a, I mean, I wouldn't call them a startup anymore, but they're a newer one. If you hadn't seen that one, if you're a broker, I would check them out.
You can send it through Copilot. It can do somewhat of an abstract, but I'd like to get it to the next level.
The Copilots, your Geminis, right? Your anything. They're getting better all of the time. But the way large language models tend to work, as most people would kind of appreciate, is that the more specific data you feed it and the more prompting you give it, eventually the smarter it becomes. You really should not be using public large language models for any type of confidential information for a variety of reasons, which we don't have time to get into. We don't do that. I think most of these companies have come to, they at least buy a company private version of Copilot. So you're a little safer.
Yeah, no, even that's what I have. I have my own private version.
But your private version of Copilot has not withstood thousands and thousands and thousands of iterations of the same type of document with a professional sitting to it saying, well, what about this and what about that? And so it's a really interesting point. Now that we've kind of mastered reading certain types of financial data from landlords, we are in the next 6 months working on a way to create a bit of a decisioning tool that ranks what we do like in operating expense language and what we don't, and what could be missing. And so I'm not that comfortable going to any company, large language model, or even, and using it, A, because I don't want them to know how we think, but B, because it's not that they can't do an incredible job comparing leases. And it's that with this specific piece of the pie. No one spends that much time thinking about it like us.
Yeah,
So
but
I'm going to find it. We are, again, not masters of the lease. I mean, I understand what an attornment clause is, but if you want me to negotiate it, I'd say go find somebody else. We are masters of the operating expense provision. It's all the time. We spend all of our time on it. And the difference, I think, between our perspective and a typical good lawyer's perspective is we are along for the ride to figure out what happens with this type of language until the end of every lease. It's just like anything else. If you went to a broker in Texas, they're going to know something about the Dallas market that
right.
Rich, you're not, and vice versa. Same thing here. We spend a lot of time in the most complex leases in the market in New York and San Francisco, Chicago, and so forth. So there's just these nuances that come naturally to us. And that's not something I'm all that interested in training into AI because it's so quick for us to do. What I'd like to do is have a tool that highlights where that might exist so our experts can quickly look at it as opposed to having to search for it.
Yeah, I think this was good.